The Switch has quietly become one of the better places to play arcade games again, mostly through remasters and compilations instead of native titles. These 10 stood out to me for the amount of work put into how they play, not just how they look. Let's get started. Marvel Maximum Collection. This is a limited-run games package built around 13 versions of 6 Marvel titles from the arcade, 8-bit, 16-bit, and handheld eras. X-Men the arcade game is the centerpiece, running with rollback netcode for 6-player online co-op, something the original cabinet obviously never had. You also get Captain America and the Avengers in both its arcade and NES forms, which play completely differently from each other, Spider-Man/Venom, Maximum Carnage and Separation Anxiety on SNES and Genesis, Spider-Man/X-Men Arcade's Revenge across 4 platforms including Game Boy and Game Gear, and the NES Silver Surfer, still one of the more punishing shooters from that library. Rewind and save states make the rougher games approachable, and there's a music player and an archive of box art and manuals if that kind of thing interests you. Shadow of the Ninja Reborn. A rebuild of the 1990 NES game from Natsume, keeping the core idea of 2 ninjas, Kaide and Hayate, cutting through a near-future dystopia to take down a cyborg tyrant named Garuda. The original was known for weapon variety and tight level design packed into a short runtime, and this version keeps that structure while adding new stages, a wall jump, extra playable characters, and reworked bosses instead of just reskinning the same 6 levels. You still cycle through the chain sickle, sword, and twin knives depending on the situation, and the game expects you to actually use that switching rather than picking a favorite and sticking with it. The presentation is redone in high-res pixel art, with a new soundtrack alongside the option to hear the original NES chip music. It's short, a couple hours at most, but it's built to be replayed rather than finished once. Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection. 12 games in one package, covering the original Street Fighter through SF2 and its revisions, the Alpha series, and SF3 in its various forms. What matters here is that Capcom went back later and patched in rollback netcode, which is the difference between this being a nostalgia piece and an actual place to play these games competitively. There's a training mode with frame data if you want to get serious about any specific version, and a museum section with concept art and box scans if you don't. The value is really in having SF3, Third Strike, SF2 Turbo, and the Alpha games sitting next to each other so you can trace how the mechanics changed release to release, since each era plays by noticeably different rules around combos and defense. It's not a flashy collection, just a thorough one. Terminator 2 D, No Fate. Made by Bitmap Bureau, the same studio behind Blazing Chrome, this follows the plot of Terminator 2 as a run-and-gun with heavier platforming than you'd expect from that description. You play through segments as Sarah Connor, John Connor, and the reprogrammed T-800, each handling differently enough that switching characters changes how you approach a level rather than just changing the sprite. Weapon pickups are limited and situational instead of stacking into one overpowered loadout, which keeps the difficulty leaning on positioning and pattern reading. The T-1000 shows up as a recurring threat across multiple set pieces rather than a single final fight, morphing and reforming in ways that force you to keep moving. Pixel art is detailed without going overboard, and the whole thing plays like a game built around the movie's key scenes rather than a loose reskin with the license slapped on top. Sega Mega Drive Classics. A straightforward library of over 50 Genesis games running through Sega's own emulator, including Sonic 1 through 3 and Knuckles, Streets of Rage 1 and 2, Golden Axe, Altered Beast, Comic Zone, Gunstar Heroes, and Shinobi 3, among others. There's no remaster work here. These are the original ROMs, with save states, rewind, and some display filters layered on top, so what you're getting is accuracy rather than reinvention. The appeal is having that many titles in one place instead of hunting down individual re-releases, and the rewind function specifically makes some of the harsher difficulty curves from that era, Comic Zone in particular, much less punishing than they were on original hardware. It's a library more than a curated experience, so mileage depends heavily on which of those 50-plus games you actually care about. Sega Ages Out Run, M2's remaster of the 1986 arcade racer, and it's a good example of how much difference careful handling makes to an old game. You still pick a branching route at each checkpoint, choosing between 5 paths of different difficulty on the way to one of several endings, which was unusual structure for a racer at the time, and still is. This version adds an arrangement mode with reworked music, extra stages, and adjustable difficulty, on top of the faithful arcade original for anyone who wants the unmodified experience. Widescreen support and various display options are included without messing with how the driving itself feels, which stays light and arcadey rather than simulation-focused. It's a short loop built for replay rather than a long campaign, closer to a score attack game than a road trip. Marvel Cosmic Invasion. From Tribute Games, the studio behind Shredder's Revenge, this is a beat-em-up with 15 playable heroes and a tag team system where you pick 2 characters per level and swap between them mid-combo. That swap mechanic is the actual hook, since it lets you call in an assist for extra hits or bring in a fresh health bar without stopping the action. And with 4 players all doing that at once, things get chaotic fast. The story has Annihilus and the Annihilation Wave invading, taking you from New York out to the negative zone. And the character movesets clearly borrow from Marvel vs. Capcom rather than typical beat-em-up templates, so people like Storm or Phoenix play very differently from Wolverine or Black Panther. Character variety is the whole pitch, not the story, and it holds up because almost nobody in the roster feels redundant.
Blast.
7 fighting games covering the full run leading up to and including Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, the original Marvel vs. Capcom, MVC2 itself, and Hyper Street Fighter 2 thrown in as a bonus. Rollback netcode is built in across the collection, which matters a lot for a series built on assist characters and combo pressure that doesn't tolerate input delay well. Watching the mechanics evolve game to game, from single characters to full 3-on-3 teams with assists, is honestly more interesting than replaying any one entry in isolation. There's a museum mode, with art and interviews if you care about that side of it, but the collection earns its place mainly because MVC2 in particular has been hard to access on modern hardware until now. Contra, Operation Galuga. WayForward's reimagining of the original Contra, keeping Bill Rizer and Lance Bean, but restructuring the campaign against the Red Falcon organization with new stages, branching paths, and additional playable characters like Ariana. The 2.5D pixel art holds up the run-and-gun fundamentals well. Weapon pickups still force constant risk-reward decisions, since dying strips your loadout back to the starting pistol. Up to 4 players can drop in for co-op, and the difficulty options range from a fairly forgiving mode up through something close to the original NES game's brutal defaults, so it scales depending on who you're playing with. It's not trying to reinvent the run-and-gun format, it's making sure the format still works on a modern screen with modern expectations around checkpoints and readability. And mostly, it succeeds at that.
Roger that. Cavalry's here.
Heads up!
Let's go!
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga Collection. 13 TMNT games across arcade, NES, SNES, Genesis, and Game Boy, including Turtles in Time and Hyperstone Heist. The earlier NES beat-em-ups and platformers, and the notoriously difficult original NES game, with the underwater level everyone remembers for the wrong reasons. Konami added online play, rewind, save states, and a boss rush mode, plus a genuinely deep museum section with developer interviews, concept art, and beta builds. What makes this one land at the top is the range. You get the tight arcade brawlers, the rougher early platformers, and everything in between, so you can actually trace how the series developed, instead of just replaying the 2 or 3 games people usually bring up. It's the most complete picture any of these franchise collections gives you, Marvel included. A lot of what's happening on Switch right now isn't new arcade games so much as old ones finally being handled with some care. Rewind states, netcode, actual archival work instead of a straight ROM dump. Let me know which of these you'd put higher and which one I'm underrating.